Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Jack. So for the second part of this wonderful evening that we have for you, we've got Dr. Jack Tait giving a talk. He's a pioneering artist who's created over 60 impressive drawing machines, some of which you can see in the room. And the drawings are in the corridor, there are 20 drawings. He was awarded a PhD in fine art practice from Manchester Metropolitan University in 2011 and published the article Programmable Analog Drawing Machines 1952 to 2023 in June's edition of Leonardo Journal, which, as many of you will know, is a very significant international art science journal. He has work in the collection of the Science Museum in London and in the Computer Art Society collection. So I'll hand over to Sean and to Jack now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can still hear me all right?
Yeah, I can still hear it. All's going well. Thank you.
So I'm going to maybe prompt you a little bit, but do you want to start with your presentation? And what I might do is I might stop every now and then and ask you a question. How does that sound?
That's okay. I'll say a couple of things first before I start.
Mm.
Is that all right?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Two things. Once, I apologize for my incompetence earlier on, and also for not being there. But there's nothing engineering can do to alter the aging process. So there we go. We all have to get there. Some of us are further down the line than others. Anyway.
I might briefly add that Jack just turned 90. Last year turned 90.
Wow.
The other thing I want to do, it's very important to me to say this. There are 4 people I want to name. The Computer Art Society has been wonderful. Without them, my work would never have seen the light of day. But John Sharp is the first person to encourage me and take me on board. Alan Sutcliffe went to the Science Museum and told them to get on with it and get my work in there. So thanks to him for that. And then Paul Brown has been enormously of help to me. And he was responsible for encouraging me to do a PhD. And finally, Sean Clark, whose marvelous work has resulted in the exhibition and this tonight. So we can start from there. But this is a synopsis. The 2 parts. One is for those of you who don't know much about my work. I've given some insight into what's going on. And then the other part is my latest obsession, which is to do with randomness, chaos, and the persistence of coherence, which is slightly odd. It's very esoteric, but it's my latest stuff. So I'll start the thing, and you can stop me anytime you want. The machine you see on top was John Sharp, came across that, and he named it a linkogram. I didn't know what to call it, but he gave it a title, and that's what started him publishing my work in his magazine. The one below is a programmer, which is a sequential timer, which you'll see on. But my interest has been from the start that simple instructions can produce complexity, and it's all been driven by curiosity. I've put these on here because you must be wondering, how does an analog artist program his machines? And it's a matter of making a cake. It's the ingredients and the different quantities you put in. So this is a list of the things that occur in programming, not always all the time. And perhaps the most important one is the forward and reverse, and the characteristic of DC motors, which vary all the time. They don't stay the same speed, even if you send a pulse of voltage into them for the same time. But I've turned that to my advantage, and it helped enormously in helping to include some randomness. The 2 machines on the right are the ones you see in the room tonight, I believe. I believe those are the ones you've got. The ones on the left are lodged in Leicester. Sean's got a collection of them, which we'll be adding to later on. These are the programmers. On the left are two that gone to the Science Museum. The one at the bottom middle is Leicester, and the one they'll be using. The two on the right are meant to mimic the throw of a dice. So there are 6 outputs. We'll talk about that more later on. These are the graphics that have been going on for some time, from left to right. Some of the left ones are early on, the sine wave, the turntable, and the top right is homage to Henry machine. Desmond Paul Henry did some work on a World War II computer, and I mimicked the machine, and we did a reverse engineering thing for his daughter. But that machine proved to be one of the most interesting that I'd ever built. The bottom set are gradually going on until we get to the ones on the lower right, which you'll come across later on, which is to do with altering the flow pen and the type of pen we're using. Some people have asked me, why do you put color into your drawings? Why don't you just leave them alone? Well, the reason for color is very much like the way the bees work. They're attracted by color, then they drop their pollen and they take the pollen away. And if you get people to come to a drawing via the color, then the theory is, it might not work, but the theory is that this will enable them to see aspects of the drawing that they might miss. So I've done a lot of that, and that was part of the exhibition for my PhD. Being a photographer background, these drawings are all done by light. The one at the top left was done on film. The next one along the top row was on photographic paper, as the one is in the middle and the bottom row. Otherwise, later, since the digital revolution, I can now draw straight into a digital camera, and that will probably go on long after the machines that I've made I'll stop making them. So I put there, tried to summarize. I'm just going to move the, sorry. The programs mimic a dice throw, a 6-point contact disc, and the one here. Can you see the arrow going to them?
You can, yep.
Okay. And this one, the top, is in the Science Museum. That was the first randomizer, and they've acquired that very recently. The second one is more sophisticated, as one hopes that the second one will be better. And this throws a dice, and you can get 6 outlets, which you can see on the screen. So this has been used in a lot of machines recently, because we can argue a lot with mathematicians, particularly, as to what constitutes randomness. And it's a good debate, and it goes on. But this is near quasi-random, and it gets close, and it never repeats itself. I can't see all of that, but previous graphic lines. I started off with the machine on the top left here. That is a Leicester at the moment. This is the randomizer. And this is the type of line that the randomizer used to produce. And in the end, I decided that, prompted by another artist, she said, why is your line always the same thickness? If you drew a line, it would vary in thickness. And I took that on board. And I also took on board something that Paul Brown said, is have you thought of using a flow pen? So taking on board prompts from other artists, I've gone and taken that a little bit further. This machine is at Leicester, and we tried with a chisel nib pen, and the result was quite interesting, very much like calligraphy, the forerunner of typography, and that was quite encouraging. So we're going from research into randomness and chaos, starting from determinism, and the route goes to randomness, chaos, and coherence. More of that later on. The inspirations, as you might imagine, Paul Klee is one of my heroes, and I take on board what he said about lines going for a walk. And that's inspired me since I was a young man in the Air Force. When I was 18, I was looking at modernist work and been looking at it ever since. So this is one of the inspirations. These are earlier drawings that are done, but they weren't that prompted me to go a little bit further and to start exploring the difference between one line and another. The middle picture here, I call that the slug line, very much like in textile industry. And that fascinated me, and I thought, how can I reproduce that again? And the answer was to use flow pens and chisel nib pens. This is the first flow pen I did. It has some similarities to the Apple logo, purely by chance. No two drawings are ever the same. But it has been the result of recent work, and some of these are very recent, like only a few days old. There are two machines. I might say that when you want to produce a computer artwork, you write another program. What I have to do is to build another machine to do specifics. The ones that you see in the room at the moment are designed specially to explore randomness. This is taking things a little bit further. The machine was built to explore flow pens. You'll see the flow pen here. And because there's a holder to the flow pen, and I'll show you some more details later on, it makes the pen lift and go down so that the thickness of the line is altered by the pen pressure going up and down. And that was a first. And this is a turntable base for Platten. And this was led to another machine, which you'll see later. Now, when you look, we'll get this. You can see it working. So these are some of the results from it. And bear in mind that they're all directed in one direction. I'm very preoccupied with the persistence of coherence. And we could talk a lot about where does coherence stop and where it begins. And it's entirely subjective. And it's something I want to explore in writings, if I'm spared before I drop off my perch. Some more again. Depending on how the pen is set, and it's very, very critical. If it's set very low, you get a thick line as here and here. But if you set it slightly less, you can get a thinner line. So there's some room for a careful adjustment. You're never quite sure how it's going to turn out. But I'm very encouraged by these. And this constitutes my recent work, which is really only a few weeks old. So you are getting the latest stuff rather than just the... This is setting the pen a little bit higher, but it still gives a characteristic like around here, where the pen stops when the motor stops sending that particular direction, and it folds into the paper and absorbs it. Oh, sorry, that was my alarm to tell me something. This is the next machine. It's called an XLYCP, linear cam pen rotation. And it was different from the other, inspired by the other. The odd thing about this machine, which is probably the last one I'll build, is that I kept thinking it was a total waste of time and almost stopped doing it. But I've learned from experience, you have to press on with things and not stop in midstream, which is usually a good procedure. So this shows the two together, the XTP on the left, which you've seen moving, and the one on the right. And these will eventually go on their way to Leicester in the fullness of time. This is some, for those of you who are interested in the detail, the x-axis is linear and the y-axis is non-linear. The y-axis here is a cam, and the x-axis along here is linear, and it's the interesting difference between non-linear and linear that I'm exploring. You can see on this area here that that's the pulley that drives the x-axis along. Sorry, I'll go back and further check on that. So these are the two of the different drawings. The one on the left, okay, I'm just having a hint of how long I've got to go. Tell me, Sean, if I'm running over time.
No, you're fine at the moment.
So this is the circular turntable one, and this is the more rectangular one. So you can see that they're quite different. Not only are they never the same again twice, and I'm not sure what will happen. I've got an expression that a lot of people don't go along with. When I say, and it sounds, I mustn't be careful, I must be careful about this, otherwise the thought police will be after me. It sounds a bit Irish, but I say something I hadn't thought of doing that. And that is the case, because the delightful thing about this is that I never quite know what's happening, and I have to leave it to chance. But I leave and delegate the decision making to the machine. This is the movie of the next. This is where the pen is. You should have some idea by now what's happening with it. These are drawings from the machine, and I draw your attention to the question about coherence. It's highly subjective, and one person's statement that they see something coherent in an image will be different from another. But that's what Gombrich always said. The eye of the beholder is the important thing, and what you get from an artwork is governed by what you bring to it. So that allows for the subjectivity. Here are some more with different pressures from the XLCYP drawings, which you can see, which I can't, my screen is obscured by some of the windows. I tried with two pens in different colors. The interesting thing was that the program is the same, but the two colors things show that with the same programming, in parentheses perhaps, in your terms, who write algorithms, is that it shows that you carry on and put a different pen in color in, and it shows the difference and how you never get the same thing twice. What I've done now is to come back a little bit to a more deterministic thing than a randomizer. And this is a piggyback. This is a machine which is timer 6, which is more deterministic. It just spins a contact wheel around, but it doesn't do any random input. But below, back to the standby, this is a forward reverse unit, which works in conjunction with this and adds a little bit of randomization to the forward reverse, adds to this, and it produces a very different picture. You might say, what's the difference to the others? But that's in the back to the eye of the beholder. I sometimes use blue because it's quite an interesting color to draw with. This is from the XTP. These are the very latest drawings that I've done, and they're just being catalogued as I speak. And so they explore the randomness of the thickness of the line, which has become very important in the study. It all adds another string to the bow for randomness and chaos, and then going on towards the subjectivity of coherence. This is putting a chisel nib pen into the latest machine, as opposed to the non-chisel nib pen, and show the difference between them. So to get towards a summary, the combination of the two has extended the range of pictures that are available. And if you take those with the original pictures and drawings, there's a vast array of possibilities. And the amount of drawings, the number probably runs into the thousands. So I think probably I've got to the end of the 20 minutes. I thought I'd end with more work suggestions. This machine here holds a digital camera and a shutter that whizzes around, and the two movements are sun and planet. Over the years, I've used sun and planet cams, which give a richness of output that you don't get with a normal cam. So there's a sun and planet here and one here. And then it's boxed in a light type box. And you can use this on your desk in daylight. And it reads straight into the camera, and 30 seconds to a minute later, you have another picture. One interesting thing is that I was asked some time ago of what the hit rate is in getting pictures. And I thought it'd probably be 100 to 1. But when I started to measure it, to my interest, it was around 15 or 10 to 1. So that's quite encouraging. You'd think it was going to be more. And that's the direction for more work. As I said, when the two recent machines will go to Lister, this is probably what I'll be pressing on with in my dotage, carrying on with doing things that I can do in a very small space. And that about summarizes it. Any questions, I'd be pleased to answer. And I can always go back on the thing if you want to.
What I wondered, Jack, could you maybe stop the share and the people can see you?
Okay. Good question. Hang on.
Maybe.
Is that better?
Move it down. That's it.
Oh, stop the share now.
That's it. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, you're still online?
Yeah, we're still here. Yeah. So just briefly, you mentioned Leicester quite a few times. I better tell people, in case they're not aware, that we have 6 machines at the moment. One of them is a randomizer, together with a body of images that have been created on the machines, as well as colorized images that you've produced. You've promised us a few more, so we have the world's biggest Jack Tait collection. I think that's fair to say.
Bigger than the Science Museum now.
Science Museum, yeah. And for us, it's a real sort of jewel in our crown, really. What we're trying to do in the R10 studio is make these machines available for people to come and use, so that there will be a sort of second generation of people using these machines to create taitographs, but their own versions of taitographs. And one of our taitograph artists, Paul Mazzatelli at the back there, he won't want everyone to look at him.
It follows Harold Cohen, doesn't it? Harold Cohen's machines after his day will continue to use Harold Cohen pictures, which is
these are continuing while you're still with us, yeah. And what excites us about that is that it opens it, asks some very interesting questions, which are very pertinent to now, which is who owns the image making, the image? You made the machine, so they embody your algorithms. The machines are being used by another artist, but they use them in their own way with their own pens, their own paper, to create their own artworks. So it's this nice image. Well, yes, the other artist, it's their work, but it's using your machine.
Well, it does answer the question, doesn't it? Who owns the artwork? I went to a primary school once or twice to show the children at 9 and 11, between 9 and 11, the machines, and let them play with them. And one little girl came up to me with a drawing because they were all going to take the drawings home with them. And she said, Mr. Tait, would you sign this picture? And I said, no, my dear, it's your picture. You did it on your machine. But no, she said, no, you built the machine. Now that out of the lips of a 9-year-old, I think sums it up. And if anybody else uses my machines, that's great. And it'll be interesting to see what they do. The real test will be, which we can't do, is to have you can have some pictures done by me with a specific machine, and you can have some done by Maz and any other people who are using them, and see what the difference is. It would be a study for someone in the future, perhaps, and touch on some of the things about subjectivity.
I think within the machines, there are enough variables that an artist can put their own imprint on the work.
I think that's inevitable.
Very interesting.
I'm very comfortable with that because once you give the permission to a machine to do something, then you've left it to get on with it. And what I think about is, I tell people when I was lecturing, the artwork is finished when the artist's done with it and it's on the wall. It's out of his or her control, and it's up to someone else then to use it to address it and
so hello to Rita for
definition of how art works. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, we're almost at the end of our slot, but if there's any questions out there, I'm sure we can take a couple of questions.
How do you know when to stop the drawing? How does it decide?
Is there a timer?
Just a gut feeling. Sometimes they take 3 minutes on the light ones. Sometimes they take a few. You're watching it and it's just chance. You do it when you think it's right. And it's seat of the pants flying.
But have you ever used time as a variable as well?
I do. I thought about that. But I chose to go with the time is the variable. The voltage to DC motors is constant. And it's the time that the programmers chop the time into little sections. It might be 1 second, half a second, 3/4 of a second, 1.4 seconds, etc. And then if you add into that, if you can imagine a timer outputting a series of pulses of different times, you add in a forward reverse, which is asymmetric, that increases the randomness even more. So it's all in pursuit of away from determinism into randomness, and to see how far it can be pushed towards the point of near chaos, which is an interesting point to define. I don't know that answers your question.
It's a good answer.
So that's actually a good point you made there, because we do have 2 of your machines here. So we have a turntable machine and a drum machine. So I haven't got them here, but they're in the other room. Turntable machine is a turntable. The drum machine isn't for percussion. It has a rotating drum. So people can actually go and have a look at them. And one of the things they'll notice is that they make wonderful sounds. So they make wonderful images, but they make interesting and wonderful sounds as well. So they're sort of multimedia machines, really.
I'm working on a video presentation where I use the sounds from some of my musical instruments to try and look at add the sound to the images and do very much a Walt Disney film that he did in abstract.
Should add also Jack makes musical instruments, so another sort of string, as it were. Okay, I think we're probably finished for now. I think thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for seeing me.